Italian grammar is the body of rules describing the properties of the Italian language. Italian words can be divided into the following lexical categories: articles, nouns, adjectives, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. Articles. Italian articles vary according to definiteness, number, gender, and the initial sound of the subsequent word. Partitive articles compound the preposition I with the corresponding definite article to express uncertain quantity. In the plural, they typically translate into English as few. In the singular, typically as some. Inflection of nouns and adjectives. Nouns and adjectives generally inflect by gender and number. Inflection patterns are similar for the two categories. In the last two examples, only the article carries information about gender and number. Most masculine words that end in io, pronounced as Joe, simply drop the o and thus end in just I in the plural. Occhio, occhi, funzionario, funzionary, vecchio, vecchi, etc. The Italian hardened soft C and G phenomenon leads to a few spelling, pronunciation peculiarities in certain cases. Words in CIO and GO from plurals in CI and GE. G. Bacio, Barci. Words in CIA and GIA have been a point of contention. According to a commonly employed rule, they form plurals in CI and GI if the final letter before the suffix is a vowel. Camicia, camici, siligia, siliagi. Form plurals in CE and GE if the final letter before the suffix is a consonant. Frangia, frange, facia, fax. When the I is stressed, it always remains in plural. Pharmacia, pharmacy, nevralgia, nevralgie. Words in co and go behave quite irregularly. The grammarians are skeptical of any attempt at giving a ruling about this area. There are only partial empirical rules of thumb. Plurals are formed with chi and ghi if the last letter before the suffix is a consonant or a stressed vowel. Fungard, fungi, stecco, stecci, megard, magi, fuoco, fuoci. Plurals are formed with ci and gi if the last letter before the suffix is an unstressed vowel. Comico, comici, medico, medici. In words ending with logo suffix, the plural is usually in gi when logo means expert or student, corresponding to English logist, while it is in ghi when it means speech or reasoning, corresponding often to English log. There are exceptions such as amico, amici, greco, greci, valoco, valeci, carico, carici. Although as in all Romance languages, the neuter gender has been lost in Italian, the neuter function has been absorbed into the masculine pronouns and adjectives used to refer to and describe unspecified neuter things such as facts and ideas. Where lo is the masculine third-person singular unstressed direct object pronoun. Nouns. Most nouns derive from Latin, from Greek, or from a Latinization of foreign words. Any other noun, both those from a Latin with an unusual ending and those derived from languages other than Latin or Greek, are not Latinized, and nouns ending with a stressed vowel are not inflected. Thus, il-re, ire, rex, reges. Il cafe, I cafe, il film, I film. There are certain words that are masculine in the singular and feminine are masculine in the plural. Il braccio, le braccia or I bracci, l'ovo, le uova. Il ginocchio, le ginocchia or I ginocchi. Il sopracciglio, le sopracciglio or I sopracciglio. These nouns endings derive regularly from the Latin neuter endings of the second declension, but there are some from the third declension, e.g., il greg, le gregi, but I gregi works. 2. The tradition of calling them irregular or mobile gender would come from the paradigm that there are so few nouns of this kind that the existence of neuter can be considered vestigial. male. The choice of plural is sometimes left to the user, while in some cases there are differences of meaning. Sometimes, for body parts, the feminine, neuter plural denotes the literal meaning while the masculine one denotes a figurative meaning. Il braccio, le braccia, I bracci, il corno, le corna, I corni. Sometimes, especially in poetic and old-fashioned Italian, the masculine plural acts as a count noun, while the neuter, feminine plural acts as a mass noun. Il cervello, du cervelli, le cervello, l'anello, du anelli, l'anello. Furthermore, il dito, le dito and also du dita, but idt indici. Irregular plurals. There are very few true irregular plurals in Italian. Some of these are uomo, gli uomini, il dio, glidei, il bu, I boy, il tempio, I templi, il carcere, lo carceri, prisons, l'ala, le ali, l'ama, le armi, le mano, le mani, elicio, gli echoes. Alteration in Italian. Altered nouns are nouns with particular shades of meaning. They are divided into diminutives, vesseggiativi, augmentatives and pejoratives. Many other alterations can be built, sometimes with more than one suffix. For example, libro can become libretto, libricino, libicolo, libraccio, libricione. Uomo, coming from a Latin homo, becomes om in altered forms, omino, omone, omaccio, omaccione. Adjectives. In Italian, an adjective can be placed before or after the noun. The unmarked placement for most adjectives is after the noun, but this is reversed for a few common classes of adjective. Those denoting beauty, age, goodness, and size are placed before the noun in the unmarked case, and after the noun for emphasis. Placing the adjective after the noun can alter its meaning or indicate restrictiveness of reference. If a noun has many adjectives, usually no more than one will be before the noun. Un libro rosso equals a red book. Un rosso libro equals a book that is read. Un buon uomo equals a good man. Un uomo buono equals a man who is good. Adjectives are inflected for gender and number. Degrees of comparison. Italian has 3 degrees of comparison: comparative, relative superlative, and absolute superlative. The comparative and relative superlative are formed with piu. For instance, sono più alto di te, sono il più alto fra gli uomini. Vice versa. Inverting the order of the words, it's required to replace piu with meno. For instance, sono il meno forte del campionato, tu sei meno alto di me. Another comparative form is made with the word come. For instance, sono alto come te. The absolute comparative is formed by placing troppo before the adjective. For instance, sei troppo buono. The absolute superlative, derived from the Latin synthetic superlative inissimus, is formed by adding issimo to an adjective. Intelligent, intelligentissimo, sporco, sporchissimo. If the 2 letters before the last vowel are pr or br, the r is removed and erimo is the suffix used. Another way to form the absolute superlative is to place either molto or assai before the adjective. For instance, sporchissimo and molto sporco are the same. Some adjectives have irregular comparatives, like buono, migliore, più buono, migliore, ottimo, buonissimo, cattivo, peggiore, più cattivo, pessimo, cattivissimo. Grande, maggiore, più grande, massimo, grandissimo, piccolo, minore, più piccolo, minimo, piccolissimo. Possessive adjectives. Possessive adjectives, like articles, must agree with the gender and number of the noun they modify. Hence, mio zio, but mio zia. So depending on what is being modified, the possessive adjectives are. In most cases the possessive adjective is used with an article, usually the definite article, and with the indefinite article. The only exception is when the possessive refers to an individual family member, but mama and papa usually get the article. For emphasis, however, possessive adjectives are sometimes placed after a noun. This is usually after words like colpa, casa, merito, piace, or invocative expressions. If the antecedent of a third-person possessive is the subject of the sentence, proprio can be used instead of suo, though the usage of proprio is declining in the spoken language. The first sentence is unambiguous and states that Marco took his own point of view, whereas the second sentence is ambiguous because it may mean that Marco took either his own or Maria's point of view. Demonstrative adjectives. Italian originally had 3 degrees of demonstrative adjectives: questo, quello, and codesto. The usage has undergone a simplification, including the meaning of codesto in quello. Only Tuscan speakers still use codesto. In modern Italian, its use is very rare, and the word has acquired a rather pejorative connotation. Pronouns. Italian features a sizable set of pronouns. Personal pronouns are inflected by person, number, case, and, in the third person, gender. Literary subject pronouns also have a distinction between animate and inanimate antecedents, although this is lost in colloquial usage where lui, lei and loro are used for animate subjects as well as objects, while no specific pronoun is employed for inanimate subjects. There is also the uninflected pronoun cio, which is only used with abstract antecedents. Personal pronouns are normally dropped in the subject, as the conjugation is usually enough to determine the grammatical person. They are used when some emphasis is needed, e.g., sono italiano versus io sono italiano. Notes: clitic pronouns. Though objects come after the verb as a rule, this is not the case with a class of unstressed clitic proforms. Clitic pronouns come before the verb. If an auxiliary verb is used, the pronouns come before the auxiliary. Other examples. Finally, in the imperative mood, the objective pronouns come once again after the verb, but this time as a suffix. Dative me, t, ci, and vi become me, te, ce, and ve when preceding another pronoun, or develop as a me, a te, a noi, and a voi when emphasized. In colloquial speech, the clitic form of the dative pronouns is often associated with the emphasized dative form in such a way. A mi danno un libro, a loro gli hanno venduto una casa. It is not grammatically correct, since it represents a repetition of the dative pronoun, but it is widely used by Italian-speaking people. Accusative me, ti, lo, la, ci, and vi become me, te, lui, lei, noi, and voi when emphasized against uccidimi, non-lui. Dative gli, la, loro can be developed into a lui, a lei, a loro when emphasized. Dative gli combines with accusative lo, la, li, la, and nita from glielo, gliela, glieli, glila, and glin. These combinations are used for feminine and plural too. Combination of clitic pronouns. In Italian it is possible to append up to a maximum of 2 clitical pronouns. The word order is not trivial. The following table shows all possible combinations. Verbs. Italian infinitive presenti may end in one of these 3 endings, either are or ia. Exceptions are also possible: fare, to do, make, and verbs ending in u, are, e, or are, most notably traduce, to translate. Italian grammar does not have distinct forms to indicate specifically verbal aspect, though different verbal inflections and periphrases render different aspects. In particular, the perfective and imperfective aspects and the perfect tense aspect combination, while the various inflected verbal forms convey a combination of tense, aspect, and mood. Language-specific discussions generally refer to these inflectional forms as tempi. For this reason it is impossible to make comparisons between the tenses of English verbs and the tempi of Italian verbs, as there is no correspondence at all. Tenses: simple tenses, compound tenses, impersonal forms, aspect other than imperfective, aorist and perfect are rendered in Italian through periphrastical forms which aren't recognized by the canonical Italian grammar as proper tenses. Examples: present tense, indicative mood, progressive aspect, io sto facendo. Present tense, indicative mood, prospective aspect, io sto per fare. Notes: compound tense auxiliary verbs in Italian. Compound tenses are formed with either auxiliary verb essere or avere. All transitive verbs use avere as their auxiliary verb. Verbs in the passive voice use essere or venire, with a different meaning. La porta è stata aperta. La porta viene aperta. For intransitive verbs a reliable rule cannot be given, although a useful rule of thumb is that if a verb's past participle can take on adjectival value, essere is used, otherwise avere. Also, reflexive verbs and unaccusative verbs use essere or more. The distinction between the two auxiliary verbs is important for the correct formation of the compound tenses and is essential to the agreement of the past participle. Some verbs use either, though, like vivere. Io ho vissuto can alternatively be expressed as io sono vissuto. Past participle. The past participle is used in Italian as both an adjective and to form many of the compound tenses of the language. There are regular endings for the past participle, based on the conjugation class. There are, however, many irregular forms, as not all verbs follow the pattern, particularly the air verbs. Some of the more common irregular past participles include essere stato, fare fatto, dire detto, apra aperto, cida chiesto, chudia sciuso, lega letto, metta messo, perdia perso, prendia preso, rispondere risposto, scriva scritto, videre visto. For the intransitive verbs taking essere, the past participle always agrees with the subject, that is, it follows the usual adjective agreement rules, lui è partito, lei è partita. This is also true for reflexive verbs, the impersonal C construction, and the passive voice, which also use essere. The past participle, when used with avere, never changes to agree with the subject. It agrees with the object, though, in sentences where a pronoun replacing the object precedes the verb. When the pronoun is first or second person, there is optional agreement. Maria, Giovanni ti ha chiamato, chiamata. No, non mi ha chiamato, chiamata. In relative clauses the agreement is obsolete. La storia che avete raccontata, raccontato non mi convince. Tense relationship in subordinate sentences. Italian inherits consecutio temporum, a grammar rule from Latin that governs the relationship between the tenses in principal and subordinate clauses. Consecutio temporum has very rigid rules. These rules require the subjunctive tense in order to express contemporaneity, posteriority and anteriority in relation with the principal clause. To express contemporaneity when the principal clause is in a simple tense, the subordinate clause uses the present subjunctive. To express contemporaneity in the present, penso che Davide sia intelligente. I think David is smart. When the principal clause has a past imperfect to perfect, the subordinate clause uses the imperfect subjunctive, expressing contemporaneity in the past. Pensivo che Davide fosse intelligente. I thought David was smart. To express anteriority when the principal clause is in a simple tense, the subordinate clause uses the past subjunctive. Penso che Davide sia stato intelligente. I think David has been smart. To express anteriority when the principal clause has a past imperfect to perfect, the subjunctive has to be pluperfect. Pensivo che Davide fosse stato intelligente. I thought David had been smart. To express posteriority, the subordinate clause uses not the subjunctive but instead the indicative mood, because the subjunctive has no future tense. Penso che Davide sarà intelligent. I think David will be smart. To express posteriority with respect to a past event, the subordinate clause uses the past conditional, whereas in other European languages the present conditional is used. Pensivo che Davide sarebbe stato intelligent. I thought that David would have been smart. Regular conjugations. The infinitive of first conjugation verbs ends in -er, that of second conjugation verbs in -er, and that of third conjugation verbs in -ir. In the following examples for different moods, the first conjugation verb is parlere, the second conjugation verb is temere, and the third conjugation verb is parture. Indicative mood. Some third conjugation verbs such as capare insert ISC between the stem and the endings in the first, second, and third person singular and third person plural of the present, e.g., capare and gt, capisco, capisci, capis, capiamo, capiti, capiscono. It is impossible to tell from the infinitive form which verbs exhibit this phenomenon, which often originated in Latin verbs denoting the intuitive aspect of an action, that is, verbs describing the beginning of an action. There are some 500 verbs like this, the first ones in alphabetic order being abere, abela, ajar, allegere, amatar, and so forth. In some grammatical systems, isco, verbs are considered of fourth conjugation, are often labeled 3b. There are also certain verbs that end in -re, namely trare, por, dare, and derived verbs with different prefixes. They are derived from earlier trafere, pone, juicer, and are conjugated as such. Subjunctive mood. The Italian subjunctive mood is used to indicate cases of desire, express doubt, make impersonal emotional statements, and to talk about impending events. Third conjugation verbs like capire mentioned above insert ISC in the first, second, and third person singular and third person plural of the present. Compound forms are made by adding the past participle to the corresponding auxiliary form in the present and imperfect. Conditional mood. From the table we can see that the verbs each take their own root. From the class of verb, a becomes air becomes and I becomes I, the same roots as used in the future indicative tense. Onto this root, all verbs add on the same ending, depending on the conjugation. Some verbs do not follow this pattern, but take irregular roots. These include and, tilde andr, avri tilde avr, bear tilde ber, dare tilde dar, davir tilde dovr, esra tilde sar, fair tilde far, godier tilde godr, bateri tilde potr, remand tilde rimar, sapri tilde sapr, sadir tilde sedr, stare tilde star, teneri tilde terrace, vadir tilde vedr, venar tilde ver, vivir tilde vivr, voler tilde vor, etc. The Italian conditional mood is a mood that refers to an action that is possible or likely, but is dependent upon a condition. Example: it can be used in two tenses, the present by conjugation of the appropriate noun, or the past, using the auxiliary conjugated in the conditional, with the past participle of the appropriate noun. Many Italian speakers often use imperfect instead of conditional and subjunctive. While incorrect, this is somewhat tolerated in spoken Italian. The conditional can also be used in Italian to express could, with the conjugated forms of potere, should, with the conjugated forms of davere, or would like, with the conjugated forms of voler. Imperative mood verbs like capare insert isc in all except the noi and voi forms. Technically, the only real imperative forms of the second person singular and plural, with the other persons being borrowed from the present subjunctive. Non-finite forms infinitive, present, past, avrì, essere plus past participle, gerund, present, ando, endo, past, avendo, essendo plus past participle, present, enter, past, atto, uto, coto, ito, are irregular verbs. While the majority of Italian verbs are regular, many of the most commonly used ones are irregular. In particular, the auxiliary verbs essere and avrì, and the common modal verbs potere, davere, sapere and volere are all irregular. Many of the irregularities are accounted for by the substance of Latin grammar. In Latin the verb had four principal parts, of which the third and fourth were formed regularly from the present stem only in the first and second conjugations, whereas in the third and fourth the presence of the I on the stem caused a mutation of the following consonants and made irregularities at a very early stage of the language. The first conjugation has the majority of regular verbs, fare, dare, and stare, which are strongly irregular. Almost every new verb enters in first conjugation and is perfectly regular. The second conjugation is usually irregular. The few regulars are from Latin second conjugation, like temere, gaudia. The majority is from Latin third conjugation. Most of these have developed irregularities in Italian. The third conjugation has two different ways, Greek one with insertion of sc, kappa, io capisco, and Latin one with no insertion, sentire, io sento. There are some irregulars but not too many. Example, mora, io muoio. The verb dire derives from Latin third conjugation, and is strongly irregular. Most verbs of the second conjugation are irregular in the passato remoto tense, which resembles the Latin perfect. Adverbs. An adjective can be made into a modal adverb by adding ment, feminine noun, to the ending of the feminine singular form of the adjective, e.g. lenta, slow, becomes lentamente, slowly. Adjectives ending in real lose the e before adding ment. These adverbs can also be derived from the absolute superlative form of adjectives, e.g. lentissimamente, facilissimamente. There is also a plethora of temporal, local, modal and interrogative adverbs, mostly derived from Latin, e.g. quando, dove, come, perché, mai, sempre, etc. Prepositions. Italian has a closed class of basic prepositions, to which a number of adverbs can be added that also double as prepositions, e.g. sopra il tavolo, prima di adesso. In modern Italian the prepositions tra and fra are interchangeable, and often chosen on the basis of euphony, tra fratelli versus fra I tralici. All the basic prepositions except tra, fra, per and con have to be combined with an article placed next to them. Sentences and word order. Italian is an SVO language. Nevertheless, the SVO sequence is sometimes replaced by one of the other arrangements, especially for reasons of emphasis and in literature. For reasons of style and meter, Italian has a relatively free word order. The subject is usually omitted when it is a pronoun. Distinctive verb conjugations make it redundant. Subject pronouns are considered emphatic when used at all. Questions are formed by a rising intonation at the end of the sentence. There is usually no other special marker, although WH movement does usually occur. In general, intonation and context are important to recognize questions from affirmative statements. In general, adjectives come after the noun, they modify adverbs after the verb. But, as with French, adjectives coming before the noun indicate essential quality of the noun. Demonstratives come before the noun, and a few particular adjectives may be inflected like demonstratives and placed before the noun. Disputed points in Italian grammar. Among sometimes prescribed Italian forms are the usage of an indicative form where a subjunctive one is traditional. For instance, Credo che Giorgio ai fossi casa is considered proper, while Credo che Giorgio ai era a casa may not be. Che Maria fosse stata a casa, l'avrei telefonato is preferred. Che Maria era a casa, le telefonavo is often prescribed, despite being usage found in classic Italian writers. Use of the object forms of third-person pronouns instead of the subject forms, which are employed in formal language. Ma però, despite this being a widespread spoken Italian form, its formal usage is grammatically strictly prescribed because of the need of avoiding redundancy.